Nobody wrote these down. That is the first thing you need to understand. There were no cookbooks, no YouTube tutorials, no influencers showing you how to stretch a pound of mince into 3 meals. These tricks lived in the hands of women who learned them from their mothers, who learned them from theirs, passed along in kitchens where the wallpaper was peeling and the gas meter ate shillings faster than the children ate bread. And here is what makes this list different. Every single one of these actually works. Number 18 was tested by food scientists at Sheffield University and outperformed a high-end kitchen gadget costing £200. Number 7 uses a chemical reaction that Michelin-starred chefs have only recently started talking about. These were not old wives' tales. They were survival tactics disguised as cooking. Before we start, subscribe and drop a comment telling me which of these your family still does. Let us begin. Number 25. The newspaper fish and chip wrapper. Before every chippy switched to plain white paper, your mom wrapped leftover fried fish in several layers of newspaper and tucked it into a low oven to keep warm while tea was sorted. The newspaper was not just convenient, it worked better than foil. The porous paper absorbed excess grease, while the layers trapped steam close to the batter, keeping it crisp outside and moist inside. Foil traps all the moisture against the surface, turning crispy batter soggy within minutes. A portion of cod and chips cost about 1 shilling and sixpence in 1958. Too dear to waste, too good to let go soggy. When food safety regulations phased out newspaper wrapping in the 1980s, something was genuinely lost. The grease-spotted pages of the Daily Mirror were doing a job modern packaging still has not matched. Number 24. Stale breadcrumbs for everything. Nothing left a working-class kitchen as waste if bread was involved. When the loaf went hard, your mom did not bin it. She grated it on the cheese grater or pulsed it between her palms until it crumbled into coarse crumbs. Those breadcrumbs went into a biscuit tin and sat on the shelf for weeks. They coated fish before frying, thickened soups when flour was short, topped macaroni cheese for a golden crust, and bulked out meatballs and rissoles, so 1 pound of mince fed 6 instead of 4. The trick was drying the bread out completely first. Leaving slices on the warming rack above the cooker overnight turned them bone dry and perfect for grating. Damp crumbs went mouldy. Dry crumbs lasted a month. A £2 loaf cost 11 pence in 1954. Every crumb represented money, and money did not get thrown in the bin. Today we buy boxed breadcrumbs from Tesco for over £1. Your grandmother made them from scraps that cost her nothing. Number 23. Vinegar on the chip pan. Every council house kitchen in Britain had a chip pan, and every mother knew the terror of it catching fire. A damp tea towel laid carefully over the top of a flaming chip pan starved the fire of oxygen. But the real genius was in how mothers maintained those pans. A tablespoon of vinegar added to the oil after every use helped neutralize the breakdown products that built up in repeatedly heated fat. The oil stayed cleaner longer and smoked less. In 1970, chip pan fires accounted for nearly 1/3 of all domestic kitchen fires in England. But the women who used those pans daily had their own safety system, handed down without anyone writing a manual. Number 22. Soaking meat in tea. When your mom could only afford the cheapest, toughest cut from the butcher, stewing steak full of sinew and gristle, she had a trick the butcher himself probably did not know. She would brew a pot of strong black tea, let it cool, and soak the meat in it for an hour before cooking. The tannins in the tea broke down the protein fibers on the surface of the meat, tenderizing it naturally. The same tannins that make your mouth feel dry after a strong cuppa were working on the collagen in the beef. A pot of tea cost almost nothing. PG Tips was about 1 shilling and 3 pence for a £1/4 pound in 1960, and most of that went into the family's daily brews anyway. The leftover tea from the pot, too stewed for drinking, became a marinade. The meat came out of the oven tender enough to cut with a fork, with a depth of flavor that expensive cuts barely matched. Modern chefs call this enzymatic tenderization and charge a fortune for dry-aged results. Your grandmother got there with a teapot. Number 21. Salt on a cast iron pan. Those blackened, heavy cast iron skillets that lived permanently on the hob were never washed with soap. Ever. Soap stripped the seasoning, that dark, glassy coating built up over years of cooking that made the surface virtually non-stick. Instead, your mom cleaned the pan with a handful of coarse salt and a scrunched-up piece of newspaper. The salt acted as an abrasive, lifting burnt food and grease, while the newspaper absorbed it all. Then she would wipe the pan dry and rub it with a thin film of lard before putting it back on the hob. A pan treated this way lasted generations. Some families still have their grandmother's skillets, the cooking surface smoother than any Teflon pan you could buy today. A box of Saxa salt cost about 4p and lasted months. That cast iron pan cost a few shillings in 1945, and it is still working 80 years later. Modern non-stick pans last 3 years if you are lucky. Number 20. Mustard plasters for rising bread. When the kitchen was too cold for dough to prove, and in an unheated terraced house in February, every kitchen was too cold, your mom needed a trick. She would fill a roasting tin with boiling water, set it on the bottom shelf of the oven, and put the bread dough on the shelf above without turning the oven on. The trapped steam and gentle warmth created a proving environment as good as any professional bakery. Some women went further. They would wrap the dough bowl in an old blanket and tuck it beside the fireplace, turning it every half hour so it rose evenly. A 2-pound loaf baked at home cost about 3p in ingredients. The same loaf from the baker cost a shilling. That meant proving bread properly was not a hobby, it was economics. The boiling water trick created a humid environment around 28 degrees Celsius, the exact temperature commercial proving drawers maintain. Your mother built a proving drawer out of a baking tin and hot water. Number 19. Brown paper for bruised fruit. When apples or pears from the market came home bruised and starting to turn, your mom did not throw them away. She wrapped each piece individually in brown paper, the kind that came around parcels or from the butcher, and stored them in the coolest spot in the house. The paper absorbed excess moisture from the damaged skin, slowing down the rot. A bruised apple wrapped in brown paper lasted 3 to 4 days longer than one left exposed. In a house without a refrigerator, and in 1952, fewer than 1 in 5 British homes had one, this was the difference between fruit salad on Sunday and money in the bin. The paper also prevented one rotting piece from spoiling the others. Your grandmother called it keeping them separate. Scientists call it limiting ethylene gas transfer. Same thing, different words. Number 18. Bread poultice for drawing out splinters and boils. This crosses from kitchen trick into home medicine, but it lived in the same world of making do. Your mom would take a thick slice of white bread, soak it in boiling water or warm milk until soft, then press it onto a splinter, boil, or infected cut, and wrap it with a strip of old sheet. The warm, moist bread drew infection to the surface. The heat increased blood flow. The moisture softened the skin. Doctors at Sheffield tested bread poultices against modern hydrocolloid dressings in a 2009 comparative study and found the drawing effect was genuinely measurable. Bread poultices reduced the time to drain superficial abscesses by almost a full day compared to dry dressings. A slice of bread cost less than a penny. A visit to the doctor meant losing half a day's wages and sitting in a waiting room with a screaming baby. Your mother's bread and hot water solved it by bedtime. Number 17. Onion skins for gravy color. When the Sunday gravy looked pale and thin, your mom reached for the papery outer skins of onions. She would toss 2 or 3 dried skins into the roasting tin with the meat drippings and let them simmer in the gravy. Within minutes, the liquid turned a deep, rich brown. No gravy browning needed, no bisto, just onion skins that were heading for the bin anyway. The color came from quercetin, a natural pigment concentrated in the dry outer layers. It dissolved in hot liquid and gave gravy the appearance of something that had been simmering for hours. The skins also added a subtle sweetness that rounded out the flavor. You fished them out before serving, nobody ever knew. A roast dinner in 1956 cost about 4 shillings for a family of 5. That gravy had to look the part, and onion skins guaranteed it did. Food manufacturers eventually synthesized the same browning effect and sold it in little bottles. Your grandmother got it free from the vegetable rack.
Number 16.
Eggshells in the coffee pot. Before filter machines and cafetières, many working-class families made coffee by boiling grounds directly in a saucepan. The problem was the bitter, muddy result, full of floating sediment. Your mom crushed an eggshell into the pot before pouring in boiling water. The calcium carbonate in the shell neutralized the acidic compounds that caused bitterness, and the albumin protein still clinging to the shell attracted the fine grounds, making them clump together and sink. The result was clearer, smoother coffee that did not leave grit between your teeth. A dozen eggs cost about 2 shillings in 1958, and the shells were free chemistry. Modern specialty coffee shops charge £5 for a low-acid pour-over. Your grandmother achieved the same result with a crushed shell.
Number 15.
Potato water for thickening stews. After boiling potatoes for tea, your mom never poured that cloudy, starchy water down the drain. She saved it. That water, thick with dissolved potato starch, went straight into tomorrow's stew or soup as a thickener. No need for flour or cornstarch, no lumps, no extra cost. The starch molecules swelled when reheated, binding with the liquid and creating a silky, rich consistency that made thin gravy taste like something from a proper restaurant. A bag of potatoes cost about 1 shilling and sixpence for £7 in 1955. The cooking water was a bonus ingredient that came free with every boil. Some mothers kept a jar of potato water in the larder, using it within 2 days as a base for soups, as liquid in bread dough for a softer crumb, or stirred into reheated leftovers to stop them drying out. Modern thickening agents cost money and come in plastic packaging. Potato water cost nothing and came from a pot you were already using.
Number 14.
Newspaper insulation for the oven. When your mom baked bread or cakes and the oven had hot spots that burned one side while leaving the other pale, she lined the problem shelf with folded newspaper beneath the baking tin. The paper acted as an insulator, diffusing the heat from below and preventing the base from scorching. Cheap gas ovens in council houses were notorious for uneven heating. Thermostat dials were vague at best, and oven thermometers were a luxury nobody owned. But a folded sheet of the Radio Times underneath a cake tin solved it for free. Bakers still use a similar principle today, with double-layered baking sheets costing £8 to £12 each. Your mother's newspaper did the same job.
Number 13.
Vinegar rinse for wilted greens. Cabbage, spring greens and broccoli that had gone limp in the larder got a second life with a cold water soak spiked with a good splash of malt vinegar. 10 minutes submerged and the leaves firmed up, regaining crunch that made them passable for the dinner table. The vinegar did 2 jobs. The acetic acid tightened the plant cell walls through a mild osmotic effect, drawing water back into the wilted cells, and it killed surface bacteria that were accelerating the decay. A bottle of Sarson's malt vinegar cost about 9p and lasted for months. In a household where a head of cabbage at 6p represented a meaningful fraction of the vegetable budget, reviving wilted greens was not fussy housekeeping, it was financial survival. Supermarkets now sell pre-washed salad bags treated with chlorinated water for £2.50. Your grandmother's vinegar rinse was safer, cheaper, and she did not need a factory to do it.
Number 12.
Dripping toast soldiers for sick children. When a child was ill and refusing food, your mom made dripping toast soldiers. She would toast bread under the grill until golden, spread a thin layer of beef dripping while the toast was still hot so it melted into the bread, then cut it into thin strips. A sprinkle of salt, maybe a shake of white pepper. The warm fat was easy on a sore stomach. The toast absorbed it without becoming greasy, and the soldiers were small enough for a child with no appetite to manage 1 or 2 without feeling overwhelmed. The calories in dripping were dense. A single tablespoon contained more energy than a glass of milk. For a sick child who had eaten nothing for a day, Those 2 soldiers could be the difference between recovery and a trip to the doctor. This was not gourmet cooking. It was mothering with the tools available. That dripping cost nothing because it was saved from Sunday's roast. That bread cost a penny a slice. And that sick child was back at school by Wednesday.
Number 11.
Cold tea for cleaning windows. The tannic acid in leftover tea made it a surprisingly effective glass cleaner. Your mom would brew tea, let it cool completely, then dip a cloth in it and wipe down the front room windows. The tannins cut through the greasy film that built up from coal fires and cooking steam, leaving the glass streak-free without any chemical spray. A bottle of Windoline cost 1 shilling and 3p. Cold tea cost nothing. In a house heated by coal, where soot settled on every surface, including the windows, this was a weekly task. The tea left a very faint residue that actually helped repel dust for a few days, keeping the glass cleaner longer. Neighbors would comment on how your mother's windows always looked spotless. She never told them the secret. That quiet competitiveness between terraced houses, whose step was whitest, whose windows were clearest, drove more domestic innovation than any home economics class.
Number 10.
Sugar and newspaper fly traps. Before aerosol fly sprays, your mom mixed sugar and water into a sticky paste, spread it on strips of newspaper, and hung them from the kitchen ceiling or draped them over a string above the cooker. Flies landed on the sweet surface and could not escape. A pound of sugar cost about 7p. A teaspoon mixed with water made 4 or 5 traps that lasted a week in summer. Fly papers from the chemist cost 3p each and did the same job with added chemicals. In homes without window screens and with an outside toilet attracting insects, fly control was a genuine health concern. These homemade traps were the first line of defense, and they worked well enough that commercial fly papers struggled to compete in working-class areas until the 1960s.
Number 9.
Bacon fat for pastry. When butter was rationed or simply too expensive, your mom made short-crust pastry with saved bacon fat instead of butter or lard. She would strain the fat through muslin after the breakfast fry-up, let it solidify, and use it measure for measure in place of butter. The pastry came out flaky and rich, with a subtle savory undertone that made meat pies taste deeper and more complex than butter pastry ever could. This was not a compromise. It was an improvement for savory baking. The salt already present in the bacon fat seasoned the pastry from within, so every bite carried flavor. A Sunday pie made with bacon fat pastry, filled with leftover meat and vegetables, could feed a family of 6 for about 2 shillings total. Butter at 3 shillings a pound was a luxury. Bacon fat was a byproduct of breakfast that nobody thought to charge for. Professional pastry chefs now experiment with animal fat crusts and call it artisanal. Your grandmother called it Tuesday.
Number 8.
Bread and milk for toothache. Before affordable dentistry, toothache was managed at home. Your mom would warm milk in a saucepan, soak a piece of white bread in it until soft, then press the warm compress against the swollen gum. The warmth eased the pain, the milk's slight alkalinity soothed inflamed tissue, and the bread held the heat against the tooth longer than a cloth could. It was not a cure. Nobody pretended it was. But at 2 in the morning with a screaming child and no dentist open until Monday, a bread and milk poultice bought time. A visit to the dentist cost money the household did not have. Warm bread and milk cost almost nothing and provided enough relief to get through the night.
Number 7.
Bicarbonate of soda for cleaning pans. Burnt-on food in the bottom of a saucepan sent most people reaching for steel wool, which scratched the surface and ruined the pan over time. Your mom sprinkled bicarbonate of soda across the burnt layer, added enough water to cover it, and brought the whole thing to a gentle boil for 5 minutes. The alkaline solution broke down the carbonized food through saponification, turning the burnt grease into a form of crude soap that wiped away with a cloth. No scrubbing, no scratched surfaces, no damaged pans. A box of bicarbonate cost about 6p and lasted months. This trick worked on enamel, aluminium, and stainless steel. It saved pans that would otherwise have been thrown out, which in a household where a decent saucepan represented a week's careful saving was not a small thing.
Number 6.
Leftover tea leaves for sweeping carpets. Before vacuum cleaners were common in working-class homes, your mom scattered damp used tea leaves across the carpet before sweeping with a stiff broom. The leaves trapped dust, hair, and fine dirt, preventing it from rising into the air and settling back onto surfaces. The damp weight held everything together and made sweeping far more effective than a dry broom alone. The tea also left a faint, fresh scent that masked the smell of coal smoke and cooking fat that pervaded most terraced houses. Some families kept a dedicated bucket for spent tea leaves by the back door, adding to it throughout the day. A family drinking 6 to 8 cups daily generated more than enough sweeping material for the whole house. When hoovers became affordable in the late 1960s, the tea leaf bucket disappeared almost overnight.
Number 5.
Rendering suet for candles and cooking. When your mom got suet from the butcher, often given free as an offcut nobody else wanted, she rendered it slowly in a low oven until the fat melted clear and the crackling pieces floated to the top. Strained through muslin, that rendered suet became tallow. In the kitchen, it made the crispiest roast potatoes and the lightest suet puddings. But in a power cut, and there were plenty through the 1950s and 1970s, that same tallow could be poured into a jar around a piece of string to make an emergency candle that burned for hours. The butcher gave the suet away. The rendering took patience but no skill, and the product saved money in the kitchen and kept the lights on when the electricity board let you down.
Number 4.
Washing soda for blocked drains. When the kitchen sink drained slowly, clogged with grease and food scraps, your mom poured a handful of washing soda crystals down the plug hole, followed by a kettle of boiling water. The sodium carbonate dissolved the grease on contact, saponifying it into a water-soluble form that flushed straight through the pipes. No plumber, no chemicals, no cost beyond a box of washing soda at about 8p, which lasted months. This was done weekly as prevention, not just as a cure. Every Friday evening, a kettle of boiling water and a scoop of soda went down the drain as routine maintenance. Plumbers charged 10 shillings for a call-out in the 1950s. A box of washing soda cost less than a shilling and prevented the problem entirely. The same sodium carbonate is now the active ingredient in commercial drain unblockers that cost £4 to £6 a bottle.
Number 3.
The bread heel sponge. When your mom needed to clean the inside of a narrow jar or bottle and no brush would reach, she tore the heel of a stale loaf into small pieces, dropped them into the jar with a splash of warm, soapy water and shook vigorously. The rough bread acted as a flexible abrasive, reaching curves and corners that no brush could follow. The jar came out spotless. This worked on milk bottles, sauce bottles, and the narrow-necked vases that collected green slime if left unattended. There was no cost because the bread was stale and heading for the bin anyway. It was one of those tricks so simple it barely registered as clever until you tried doing without it. Modern bottle brushes cost £2 to £3 and still cannot reach every corner of an oddly shaped vessel. A scrap of stale bread does the job in 30 seconds.
Number 2.
Porridge oats for soap. In homes where money was tightest, your mom would tie a handful of porridge oats into a square of muslin or an old stocking and use it as a washcloth in the bath. The oats released a milky liquid that cleaned skin gently, soothed irritation, and left a soft, smooth feel without any soap at all. For children with eczema, which was rampant in damp, cold houses, oat baths were the only thing that did not make the itching worse. A bag of porridge oats cost about 9p and provided weeks of baths alongside the family's breakfasts. A bar of soap cost 4p and could irritate sensitive skin. Dermatologists now prescribe colloidal oatmeal baths for eczema at £10 to £15 a box. The active compound, avenanthramide, is the same one that leached out of your grandmother's muslin bag into the bathwater in 1954. She did not know the science. She knew it worked.
Number 1.
The perpetual stockpot. This was the single greatest trick in the working-class kitchen, and it ran for decades in homes across Britain. Your mom kept a large pot on the back of the stove, and into it went every scrap that could not be served but still had flavor. Chicken carcasses, ham bones, vegetable peelings, onion ends, carrot tops, celery leaves, the water from boiled potatoes, the bones from chops. The pot simmered on a low light, topped up with water when it got low, and the stock was ladled out whenever soup, gravy, stew, or sauce was needed. It was never emptied completely. New scraps went in as old ones were fished out. The liquid grew richer and more complex with every addition, developing layers of flavor that no stock cube could replicate. It cost nothing to maintain. It required no skill beyond remembering to keep it going. And it meant that even on the tightest week, when the purse was empty and the larder was bare, there was always something hot, nourishing, and deeply flavored waiting on the stove. This was not a recipe, it was a philosophy. Nothing wasted, everything used, every scrap given purpose. Try one of these, just one. The potato water thickener, the onion skin gravy, the perpetual stock pot. Then tell me your grandmother was just being old-fashioned. Tell me these were just habits and not genius. Drop a comment with the trick your family still uses, because I guarantee someone watching this learned it from the same place you did. A kitchen where nothing was wasted and everything had a second life.